And a story I don't think has been covered enough by our mainstream legacy dying media. And this is, well, the non-sentencing of a 21-year-old from Gisborne, and that's all I can say about him, who pled guilty to assaulting a 71-year-old woman, Judith Dobson, during the Posey Parker rally, or the riot, caused by Chanel Lal and the Green Party and their mates, 2,000 frenzied trans activists against 200 women who just wanted to turn up and speak. But the judge says the guilty plea, I'm going to discharge this man without conviction. He's got to pay just $1,000 of fine for hitting someone so hard he broke the bone in her face, and she's got ongoing issues. And he gets permanent name suppression. She can't even say the name of the man who beat her up. Why? Because it was his first offence, and he's really, really, really sorry. I wonder what women who were at that rally make of it. To find out, we're talking to Suzanne Levy, who's from Speak Up for Women and has been on the platform before. Suzanne, lovely to have you back.
Oh, good morning, Sean. How are you?
Very well. What was your feeling when that sentence came down?
Well, I can't say I was surprised. It was always looking like they were angling for that kind of, initially diversion they wanted and what have you, and they ended up with a discharge without conviction. So I wouldn't say I was surprised at all. Really, really disappointed still, though.
Yeah.
And I think, the messages that it's sending to men that they can just sort of silence women if they have an opposing
I think a lot of men feel the same outrage that women do, Suzanne.
Oh, I'm sure they do. Yet that is a message that's going to, particularly young men in the cult. Well, that is what it is. I also, another thing I found interesting was suddenly now Albert Park, the gender protesters, the gender activists, were now in a frenzy where, if you think back to the media reporting on the day,
it was
in the weeks following, it was a love fest of unicorns farting strawberry flavoured
rainbows.
Fart. I mean, it was just all lovely, and now it's a frenzy. Which it was. We all know it was a frenzy. It was a cult-led hate fest on women, basically.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting that was sort of used as this young man's defence, where at the time there was no violence.
Has there been, to your knowledge, any reconciliation message where he has profoundly apologised to Judith for what he did to her?
I couldn't say. Yeah. I don't know what he said to Judith. Yeah. All I know.
I'd have a lot more respect for him if he stepped out from behind anonymity and expressed real regret and stood in the full glare of the public and showed true contrition.
Yeah, I mean, he's possibly not mature enough for that. He's so immature that he got caught up in that frenzy. He went along knowing about his ADHD and autism and how he might react, and behaved incredibly violently and badly. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't expect him
Suzanne,
to be...
Dave, the brickie, a regular, says, please tell this lady men don't want to silence women. It's men in frocks that want to silence women.
Well, it's not just the men in frocks. It's some men and it's some women as well. So but it's definitely not just the ones in frocks. Some of the worst people in terms of silencing our group are not transgender. They would call themselves, transgender allies. And they will, or they might have transitioned or tried to transition their children. They are absolutely rampant. They are not going to let this go. So it's not just men in frocks. It's all sorts of people. It's people who call themselves lesbian feminists. Now, I call myself a lesbian feminist, but there are, other lesbian feminists who would rather that we just, absolutely shut up. Yeah. So it's not that simple, unfortunately.
Did you hear Kelly J on the program earlier?
No, I didn't. I missed that one.
She talked to us live this morning.
Yeah, I didn't realise she was going to be on.
Well, we didn't until this morning. It was, but she moved a few things around for us. She was basically chuckling at the demise of News Hub, who played a huge part in what happened that day. And as I said, we get angry at this guy who was 20 at the time, but there was a whole set of circumstances that created that. Our government was responsible, the police were responsible, our news media were responsible.
I absolutely agree, and I think the frenzy that occurred. That young man went along there, so I imagine so fired up that he thought he was justified in doing whatever.
And punching a Nazi. That's what he thought he was doing. He thought he was punching a Nazi.
To silence these pesky turfs. That's kind of what. And he was 20. I mean, I've got a 20-year-old. They know they know nothing. Well, they know lots, but they, in terms of how
they don't know what they don't know, Suzanne.
They don't know what they don't know, and so I think it really does show how much of a cult this gender stuff is, because people do get swept up. Now, I don't know what his association in particular is with the movement, whether he's simply caught up in it, whether he's a student. Look, in terms of name suppression, I suspect everybody who knows him knows what he did. Yeah. I think, I know his name, and knowing his name added nothing to my day. I don't know him. So I'm sure as you said, he's a 21-year-old from Gisborne. Gisborne is not a very big place. I'm sure everybody in Gisborne knows exactly what he's done. That doesn't take anything. I shouldn't take anything away from Judith. She does have a right to be able to say his name, I think. And I think he should have been convicted. There should be some ongoing impact on his life. And he punched somebody 3 times. He punched an older woman in the face 3 times.
Broke a bone in her face, and you've got to do that with some intent. And look, someone suggested that there shouldn't be discharge without conviction for violent crime, and I've been thinking that that's actually not a bad rule of thumb. But don't forget, this is a judge who let off a 25-year-old who masturbated in front of a child at a public swimming pool because he might have had jet lag.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought the discharge for conviction things were based on, the eligibility was based on the minimum sentence or the maximum sentence for that particular offence. And I would have thought a violent offence like that would have had a reasonable sentence normally allocated to it. Yeah. So, which might make you ineligible for discharge. What I was pleased about and is that the police actually opposed it, and they opposed diversion. So they wanted him prosecuted, which I think is one small positive out of it. Yeah. They
didn't oppose name suppression though.
They didn't.